What was it like for you being a parent on the sidelines when I was in high school?
I think the toughest thing is that when you come in as a parent, you know nothing about the recruiting process. You don't even know if your kid is good enough to play in college. And I found that being on the sidelines was very anxiety ridden. It was very competitive. Parents are very competitive.
Yeah.
As you got older and you got closer to being recruited, we found that parents were talking about their child was already committed, or their daughter was already going on an official visit, and you weren't.
Yeah, it gets a little political too.
It was scary. It was like, well, is my daughter good enough? How come she hasn't been seen by a college coach? Is she good enough to play D1, D2, D3? I didn't know any of the answers to those questions. And it was tough. And I'm in the business, and I don't know the answers to those questions because I'm not really a college coach. I don't know what they're considering. And it was tough.
Yeah.
But we did it.
How would you recommend, or what would you recommend to a parent as far as promoting their daughter? Like, how did you promote me and Jana?
Okay, so I have a marketing background, and in that marketing background, I really treated you like a product. And part of the product...
He would always say that, by the way. He would always call me and Jana products that he was just selling.
Yeah. And you start with name recognition. It's really important for the coach to know your name because you're going to go to these events. There's going to be thousands of people at these different showcases, and how are they going to know you from somebody else? So it starts with name recognition. And I think that you can do that in many ways. It starts with not just filling out the college questionnaire and getting on their list, but then you have to start emailing them. And you have to have a reason to email them. You can't just say, oh, the weather's really great, but you have to have something like, I've just made this team, or I'm going to be playing at this tournament, or I just have this accolade or award, or something is new going on in my life regarding sport. It could even be an academic award. All of these things are reasons to reach out to the coach. So you don't want to be boring. You don't want them to turn off every time you write them, and you don't want to write them too much, but you want to write them and have something to say. And you need to find those reasons and something to say. And you got to also realize, what is your goal in this process? Your goal is to be seen, not to get recruited. When you're reaching out to coaches, when you just start this process, your goal is to be known and to be seen. Because then once they see you, it's your ability and your attitude and who you are as a player and whether you can fit into their style of game or not. You can't choose that. They have to choose that. But what you can do is be active in trying to get known and be seen. And that comes with name recognition. So that's the start. Emails, and have a reason to email them. And that's work. That's a job in itself, but it's worthwhile.
So switching gears here, talking about visiting schools. When I was in high school, I was really fortunate that I had an older sister, 2 years older than me, who was a really good field hockey player, really great academically. And we went to a lot of campuses as a family, checking out the campuses. I went extra early because I went with my older sister. But you and Mom were really encouraging of always visiting college campuses, no matter where we went, no matter if we were interested or not. I found that really helped me looking back. What would you tell parents about the school visits and official visits, etc.?
Well, official visits specifically, and that's when you're invited onto campus by a coach, that means that the coach is interested in you. And the coach does not care about the parent. They don't care if you're there.
They don't want you to be crazy, though. They don't want you interrupting their conversation with the athlete.
They only care about the athlete. Yeah. They want to get to know you. If they want to get to know me, it's only in the way that I'm going to interact with the coach and you. So they're watching us, but they really don't care about us. The whole experience is about coach to player, team to player, and we're on the sidelines. We're not even I don't know if I went on campus the 2 or 3 days that you were on your official visit. So that was in Richmond. We stayed in the city of Richmond, but here's the thing, parents, that at the end, they're going to say goodbye to your daughter. And you have the opportunity to now sit with the coach. Usually the coach will invite you to sit with them. If you don't, you tell your daughter that it's really important that you want to sit with the coach before you leave, because this is your only opportunity that you're going to actually get to ask a question to a coach. And at that time, you sit down. It's usually in the evening. They're saying goodbye to your daughter. You sit there and you get to ask all those questions that you've wanted to ask. And for me, it was always, is my daughter good enough to play on your team? Well, usually it's kind of like a no-brainer because she's there. Of course, she's been asked to come on campus. Yes, she's good enough. Well, just because she's been asked doesn't mean you have 5 official visits you can do. They can invite 100
they have
people.
Unlimited, whatever in their budget, but usually it's not that expensive for them to do an official.
Right. So it even if you're on an official visit, it doesn't mean that you're the number one prospect that they've got. So you get to ask all those questions. One is, where does my daughter fit into your hierarchy of kids that you're looking at? For instance, we went to one school. She actually had a draft board, and she showed it to us. It was kind of hidden behind things. We were in her office, and at the end, she goes, well, your daughter's down here. And we were able to get a feel for how important Tori was to that coach.
Which is rare. Most coaches won't show you that, so don't ask to see their draft board. But if you ask these questions, you could learn these things.
And it was really important that we knew where these different coaches, and Tori was a little different than her sister. Her sister knew exactly where she wanted to go to school. Tori was...
Oh, I had no idea.
Big schools, D1 down to D3. And so when we talk to coaches, and we talk to a lot of them, we have to know where their excitement level for Tori was. So you get to ask those questions, and I really encourage you to ask those questions, because once she's accepted to that school and she's playing on that team, you'll really have very little interaction with that coach, because...
Hardly any.
Hardly any. I mean, they're nice and they're polite, but you're not going to call them up and say, how's my daughter doing? And if your daughter calls you in the middle of the night saying, she's having a rough time, whether on the team or academically.
Which will happen.
You're not going to call the coach up. So you're persona non grata to that extent. And that's the big thing. Ask a lot of questions. That's going to be your only opportunity. And we can actually put something together sometime and maybe send it out to you that has some of the questions that we think are appropriate.
And one thing I found really helpful for my visits that you made me do was you always made sure I had a journal and a pen, and we reviewed all the questions that I was going to ask the coach in that visit. So we would do like a practice, like my mom would pretend to be the coach, and we'd kind of do role playing, and we do that in the car driving there. So that was really helpful, something that you guys made me do before every visit. And making sure, well, back then it was my printed resume. Now what we discussed earlier, it can be your business card that you bring. So you guys always made sure that I was prepared for all those visits, which was really helpful. And one other thing that I remember from high school that I want to bring up is, as an athlete, and I was an outgoing, confident kid, but I hated to call up the coach. And I didn't even like emailing the coach. I was worried that they weren't interested. I don't even know why, but it freaked me out, and I know it freaks a lot of my athletes out. But one thing I appreciate looking back, did not appreciate it then because it was scary, but looking back, you forced me. You're like, make that phone call, do it now. And I was like, no. And like the emails, you were like, Tori, did you send that email out today? You really held me accountable. So what would your advice be to parents as far as finding the balance between creating like a stable home environment, but also being there for your daughter and holding them accountable, making sure they're doing everything that they can? Like, where's that balance?
Yeah, that's difficult because I only speak about Tori, both my kids. They're involved with sports, they're involved with academics, they got a social life, and I've got them working part-time for our company. Doesn't leave a lot of time to be writing emails and doing correspondence and making phone calls. Very difficult. I might suggest to you to get common Gmail account that has access for both the player and the parent. And from there, the parent can help write the emails or craft the emails.
Write, edit.
Okay, help edit the emails, but you can kind of work together because let's face it, the players have a lot. Your daughter has a lot on her plate. So any help you can give her in that aspect, I think is good. But don't send the emails. It's got to be her voice. And I know Tori's gone over the signatures. That's really important. Don't leave any details out.
But encouraging them to call, because calling the coach is really important, and you were on my back all the time about that.
Well, what I thought was really important was that you were seen as the individual taking, making your effort to talk to the coach on your own. And I remember one time we went to a college, and you didn't even know that we were going in there, and I opened the door and I said, go up to her office.
Oh my God, I was so scared.
I said, knock on her door. Well, what am I going to say? Knock on her door and tell her that who you are, because you'd already sent her some emails, and say that you'd like to, meet with her.
To wrap up this couch session with my dad, thank you so much for joining in our class. And parents, I hope you found this little session helpful.